Thanks, Jane. Never easy to follow a great speaker like that, but I'm possibly not the most subtle person on earth, and so I might try and tell you some stuff that maybe you might not want to hear, and if that bothers you, I really don't care. I want to, how do I, here you go, I've got it. So everybody in this room is in food production, right, or food retailing. Who's in marketing? Put your hands up, who's in marketing? Excellent, because that's what I wanted, because I'm used to speaking to pig producers, and pork is very similar to seafood, except we're really simple, and what you've got to do is really complicated. So if you look at this as a normal person, not a marketer, what do you see? You see people having coffee at a restaurant, which is kind of relevant because most seafood gets eaten at restaurants far more than in home. However, as a marketer, you see something completely different. The first thing is all of the people at that table are heartless bastards. And the reason they're heartless bastards is they have never thought of your industry ever in their life. They've never said, oh, I wonder what's going on with the seafood industry today. And that's because the world and his wife are 12th century astronomers. Everybody looks up at the stars, see they move and think, hey, they must move around me. No. So the reason they don't think about you, and they don't think about pork either, is they're interested in their kids, or their work, or their mortgage, or where they're going on holiday, or why that girl's got really, really bright yellow tights on. Whatever it is they're thinking about, it's not us. And the reason that I agree with the storytelling line is that if you look at media delivery, each of you every single day gets 80,000 messages. You notice 10, and 5 of them you misappropriate to a different source and actually told you what the message was. So getting people's attention is really fucking hard. So if you can't tell a story, you're screwed. There's another thing that's also true about these people, which is, oh, I'm going to skip that, which is they actually make all of their decisions in a non-rational basis. So roughly 6% of the decisions you make are rational. You evaluate different alternatives, you give different weightings to different criteria, and you come to a conclusion, which means 94% of the decisions you made are not rational. And for food, how do you choose what you're going to cook for the people you live with at home? You don't actually go into a shop and say, right, I'm going to make some apple sauce to go with some pork. Now, do I have Bramley apples or Golden Delicious or Pink Lady? You don't do that. You know which ones you like, and you go and pick up the Pink Lady apples, and you go and pick up the leg roast, and you don't actually think about this at all. And the reason you do that is that if you went shopping on a rational basis, you'd spend 36 hours every week in Woolworths. And the numbers are mind-boggling. Even if you only buy 40 items, and there's only 5 options that you can possibly buy, and there's only 5 criteria, if you spend 3 seconds on evaluating each option, that's 37.6 hours. So the reason that they're not thinking about it is not really that they're heartless bastards. It's just they've got lots of shit going on. And like you've got a 2-year-old kid and 40 things to buy, that's more ambiguity than most people can deal with in a lifetime. So people are not interested in you, they're interested in them, and the number of people that they actually are interested in, they've probably got more fingers on one hand then. So the reason that I think you should listen to us, oh, sorry, that was the wrong one, is that around, if you look at this period, the red line here is what would have happened to pork industry revenue if it just followed inflation, and the light orange line is what actually has happened, and the thin yellow line here is the 7-year average. And the reason we do a 7-year average is that we're an agricultural industry. If you look at any one year, it's a big profit, and the next year is a big loss. So if you take any one year, you can't actually say what causes and affects anything. And if you look around here, this bit, up until here, up until about 2003, we were above the line roughly the same as we were below the line. So we were doing, as an industry, we were doing as well as inflation. Between there and there, we suffered a lot of imports. So we went from having maybe 0.5% of production being imports to about 40% of production being imports. And what that did was it depressed pig prices. But if you look from 2010-ish onwards, we've grown quite rapidly, and we've grown so that we're now ahead of where we would have been if we'd just got inflation. And the reason what we've done, or what's caused that, is one thing. We've hired some really, really, really smart people and then got the frickin' hell out of their way. And that's really all we've done. So, why am I here at Seafood Directions? Well, I'm here because I want to collaborate with you, and I'm going to tell you why you should want to collaborate with me. So, in meat, in protein, there are only two types of decision. There's a type of decision which is chicken and beef, which is the same as you make for toilet roll and blend 43 coffee. You don't even stop walking as you pick it up. You know you've got to have beef mince, you have it every week, everybody likes it. So you might actually look at the sell-by date maybe, but you're not actually considering whether you are or aren't going to buy beef mince. And chicken breast is exactly the same. So these lines are volume sales. These two are habitual, and you don't even think about it. All of the rest of us, so seafood, pork, which is pink, and lamb, which is green, we're occasional sales. We only get to visit every now and again. We're not in the fridge every week. And what we want to do, and why I want to collaborate with you, is we want to make the number of occasions higher, and we want to steal those from the everyday, not thought about meal occasions. And the reason we want to do that is there are no more meal occasions. You're not going to eat more, and if you are going to eat more, you shouldn't. Almost everybody eats too much already. So the reason I want to collaborate is these people basically, if I was marketing beef and chicken, I'd be saying, don't change anything. What you're doing is perfect. But if you're 2.5% of all meat sales, like seafood is, you're saying, no, you want to try some new stuff. What about this? How about that? And I've got exactly the same problem you've got. I've probably got a bit more money, but I've got exactly the same problem you've got. So that's why I want to collaborate. And there's probably another point around this 2.5%, which is, and for me it's very similar to horticulture. If you think that advertising your particular type of prawn that comes from a particular piece of the Tasman Sea is any use, please stop. Consumers don't give a crap about most of that stuff. They really don't. I'm going to talk to you about social license in a minute. They don't give a crap about that either. Nowhere near as much as we spend talking about it. But what they do know is they say fish is a category to people, and shellfish is a category to people, and then maybe crabs and lobsters are a bit out on the side. They probably are a bit by themselves. They don't really compete directly very much. But if you're in fish marketing, just advertise fish. You don't really care if it's your fish or somebody else's fish. And that's how the pig producers work. They say, look, we're happy for you just to sell an extra pig. We don't care if it's George's or Jane's or Jeffrey's. It makes no difference. Because if that pig's disappeared, the price has gone up a little bit for all of the rest of them. And I don't believe, from what I've seen, that you guys have enough cash to get above threshold in marketing terms to influence lots of consumers if you don't work together. So I'm not saying work together because you're lovely and friendly. You're going to fail if you don't. So the next point is that, and I put this up largely because as an industry body, I have no downside in sharing the information we've got with you. So if you've got questions about how much seafood gets sold where, we know that stuff. We've already paid for it. I'd happily share it. And likewise in food service, you can see that fish has a 12% share in the last quarter of, it's been in 12% of meals that have been eaten out of home in total. You're 2.5% of what gets eaten in home. So working out how to work out of home is probably a big freaking idea for you guys. And again, like I say, this is data that we buy anyway. So if you've got questions about what's going on in the marketplace, I don't know, but we've got some very clever people that probably can tell you. Now, this is another bit of information which is one of those things which you can't not do. So in the pork industry, we have a transparency policy, and on our website you can go and see every single stage of pig production, from artificial insemination to chopping it up and putting it in a butcher shop. Every single stage, because you can't not do that stuff. Because otherwise people say, well, what have you got to hide? Do I actually go and promote it? Do I want all of you to go to that website? Probably not. But you can't not do it. However, you look at how important welfare is, and 43% of people say that welfare is important to them. But there's important and important, right? So if you say to everybody in the room, have you got a sense of humour? Very few people are going to say, no, I've got no sense of humour at all. And it's the same with welfare. Everybody wants it to happen, but nobody's prepared to pay for it. And that's not entirely true. Maybe 17% of people are prepared to pay for it. And those 17% of people, 12 of those 17% of people are rich bastards who can afford to pay for it. There's only 5% of people that are truly passionate about it, but because Brian Skepper's a very successful man, he might be able to afford to go and buy free range, and he might feel better about buying free range. You can't tell the difference at all. It doesn't taste any different at all. Objectively, it's the same. But it makes him feel good. So when you talk, my point here was, when we talk about social license, which we do this social license and we cover fisheries every year, don't not do it. Don't ignore it. But don't kid yourself that it really is important to a large group of people, because the vast majority of people buy food on, does it taste good? Do the people I love like it? Can I afford it? And if the people I've served food to give me an empty plate, that's the best feeling I'm going to have that day. Which is why you always cook the same shit, because you know the people that you're cooking for like that stuff. So. What we've done in the food service arena, which is something that I think that you guys need to be involved in, and our food service guys have actually started without you, I'll tell you about that in a minute, is we've said we are not big enough as an industry to be really interesting to chefs on a business level. Fortunately, most chefs aren't actually that bothered about the business, they're really bothered about the food. And if you ask chefs where do they get inspiration from, they get inspiration from other chefs. So our Pork Star program is essentially get chefs together, talk about pork for 3 or 4 minutes, serve them some lovely food, and let them inspire each other. And because they're at a Pork Star event, they feel obliged to talk about pork some of the time, and as a consequence, when they go away, they put one more pork thing on their menu. Everybody's good, but we've not tried to sell them anything. All we've done is facilitated them inspiring each other. And that's really what the Pork Star program is about. And that's something that seafood absolutely can do, because you're already big in that marketplace. The next chart is one that I'm particularly proud of, because what we said to producers was, back in 2010, we said, look, we're getting close to being below threshold. We're getting close to not having enough money to be able to say to you, no, we're getting you a good return on investment. We're getting close to, you know what, soon we're going to start pouring TV and radio advertising down the drain, because it's just not going to hit enough people to make a difference in sales. If it doesn't make a difference in sales, what are we doing it for? So we went to pig producers and said, look, and this is my recommendation for how to do return on investment arguments, treat it like a transaction. What we did was we said to pig producers, if you give us an extra 90 cents a pig, which is about an extra $4.5 million a year, we will give you an extra 1.3 kilos per person of fresh pork consumption. That's the deal. It's up to you. It's your money. Take it or leave it. But the beauty of that is that it's really simple for them and us to track. So then every month, all we've got to do is say, look, we're on track or we're off track. And in that particular case, we were on track. But, sorry. But here, when we got to spend more money, we could actually demonstrate. So that this is this red line here is the how much money we've spent on advertising in a year. You see where it goes up. This pink line is pork's demand, and you can see that pork's gone up roughly 6 months after we started spending more money. The yellow line, by the way, is what you'd have expected to get as a producer anyway. That's population growth plus meat inflation, which realistically you can't put down to good or bad marketing. You should get that anyway. Having said that, fish and seafood volume, 31st of October 2009, 2.1 million kilos. Fish volume 4 weeks ending 9th of September this year, so that 2.1 million kilos was in 2009. 2017, 2.1 million kilos. You've grown nothing in 7 years. Growth is probably a good thing, just quietly. So we're fairly sure now that this increase in levy has pushed us through another threshold, which has got us to another level of marketing effectiveness. And so I couldn't have told you beforehand, but now I can. So on average, in over 7 years, a pig producer's margin has gone up by 12 cents a kilo. 12 cents a kilo on 400 million kilos is an extra 48 million bucks they're getting, and they're giving us $4.5 million bucks to get that 48 million. Now, clearly, all of that 48 million is not down to us. There's a billion factors that have helped. So population growth has helped. The fact that more people that come into Australia these days come from countries where they eat more pork. All of those things have helped. But if somebody could stand up in front of you as a seafood industry and say, hey, if you give me 50 million, I'll give you 300 million back, would you take the deal? Because that's basically what good industry marketing can do if you're prepared to collaborate. We talked a little bit about country of origin labelling, so I just wanted to touch on that. And country of origin labelling, the pig industry has managed to convince itself too that it's really important to consumers. Then go back to the cafe. How many times have you walked into a cafe because you're really hungry and it's 5 to 8 and you've got to be at work in 20 minutes and said, hey, I'd love an egg and bacon sandwich, but just before you give it to me, can you tell me where the egg came from? Every morning, or lots of mornings for lots of Australians, you have Vegemite for breakfast on toast. How many times have you thought about the person that fixes the machine that puts the lid on the Vegemite? That's what you're asking them to think about when you're asking them to think, oh, I want you to think about the seafood industry. In what reality are they ever going to do that? Tell them that this tastes good, or it's good for their kids, or actually you'll get that lovely feeling when everybody's finished eating their dinner and all of the plates are empty and they're all wanting more. Tell them about that, but don't tell them about the seafood industry. They really don't care. So, Australian, what have we found about Australian? So the story thing definitely resonates. So when you can say, this lobster was caught by Baz, or this sow was cared for by Gertrude, all of a sudden it feels real and not made up. It's like consumers, 70% of consumers, think that food magically appears on Woolworths shelves during the night. And if you don't believe me, that's how they act. It's like they have no idea where it comes from, they don't even think about it. But we can tell them stories, but the stories have to be all of the 11 things that Nick told us. But what we found is that if you say it's Australian, yeah, kind of okay, because that means safe and good quality and quality assurance and all of that stuff. If you can add a person, much more powerful. If you can add a place, much more powerful. If you can add supporting somebody else, all of the dopamine that you get from when you do a good turn, like supporting Australian farmers or supporting Australian fishermen, yeah, that all works. But you've got to tell it over a long period of time because people only pick up a little bit of it. Remember, go back to the beginning, you get 80,000 messages, you actually correctly identify and appropriate 5. So start telling the stories is a good idea, but it will take a long time. So we've only been doing it for 9 years, and now 57% of people, I think, remember our Australian pork logo, but we spent $50 million doing it. I'm going to skip that. So in the, this is my personal hobby horse, which is in the digital space, be very clear that lots of people will sell you lots of stuff, and social media is primarily exactly that, social. So it's really good for talking to my mum who's in England, because I can share stories at my time and she can pick them up her time. It's really not very good for commercial stuff which is clearly commercial. If it's from an individual, fine, that works fine. But if it's not from an individual, and let me give you a for instance. If you look on woolworths.com.au, no, if you look on Woolworths' Facebook page today, you'll find somewhere around 1,008,000 likes, roughly. Now that sounds really good, right? But 1,008,000 likes has occurred since 2004. So not quite so good. When you think about how many people walk through and interact with Woolworths in the physical sense every week, which is just over 21 million, Facebook doesn't seem quite as powerful a communicator for content which is not relevant. So the key to social thing is insert yourself in a conversation with relevance. So if we're having a conversation in a pub and we're talking about football and somebody comes over and starts talking about environmentalism, you probably wouldn't let them interrupt for very long before you ask them to go and talk to somebody else, would you? And social is exactly the same. So.
When you start with pork mince, who knows where you'll end up? Get some pork on your fork.
So I'm going to stop it there because it goes for 5 minutes. There's 2 points that I wanted to make. The first point is that if you're going to do industry marketing, and you're going to do industry marketing not where all of the industry is, you're going to do it where the consumers are. So you've got to do something like that, which we do a 5-minute video every month, which we send to our members and say, this is what your money got spent on. Because they forget otherwise, they think you're not doing anything. They think you just sat in Canberra drinking coffee, which some of us are, but there are some people doing work. And the second thing is that that ad in particular, when I think about how to collaborate with the seafood industry, I'm saying, well, you as an industry have got a great opportunity because you have 2 peaks in your year, everybody else has Christmas. But because Good Friday is associated with fish, I'm sat there saying, well, why would we not make next Easter pork and seafood Easter? Because you're sat there saying, I can make an ad like that, which starts off with fish for Good Friday. It might have, I don't know, pork steaks and prawns on the barbie on Saturday, scallops and a roast pork on Sunday, whatever on Monday. But I'm sat there saying, this isn't because I'm nice. This is just because you've already associated with Easter, and I want to steal some of that. And if in stealing some of that I help you, no downside, because the real people that I'm trying to fight against is not you. The real people we're trying to fight against is habit, because everybody else has got habit and we don't. So with that, thank you very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed talking to you.